morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to my favorite day of the week, the Influential You podcast. I'm Josh D'Amigo, lead faculty for Influential You and your co-host for this weekly podcast. John will join us again next week. At Influential You, we teach you how to take charge of your career and amplify your professional influence. Since 2009, we have helped thousands of business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs become more influential, more rewarded, more you. Today, we welcome Crystal Evans to the Influential You podcast. Crystal Evans is the owner of Conejo Awards, a 50-year-old promotional products award, business gifts, and signage company located in Thousand Oaks, California. Now, Crystal and I met at a young professional mega mixer about 6 or 7 years ago and just shared photos of our dogs. That's how we became friends. But when I got my new job at Influential You, she was one of the first to believe and support me in my endeavors. And it's safe to say she's grown alongside me, and I've loved studying with her over the last 4 years. I'm trying to make her cry before we start. Crystal holds her Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration and Marketing from California Lutheran University and has completed the Fundamentals of Transaction Mechanics and Practice programs and is currently working through Mechanics and Practice 2, Planning, Strategy, Tactics, and Implementation. And I'm just letting Liz know she's also promising to get her homework in. And I told her I was going to do this before. Crystal describes herself as ambitious, creative, disciplined, and eager to learn. And as you'll hear in the interview, she had to face a lot of naivete because her thinking and some of the things that she was doing weren't really working. And now she has a plan to help her business thrive. Please welcome to the Influential You podcast, Crystal Evans. I push that button and we get to go. Hi, Crystal. Welcome.
Hello.
Now, I probably undersold your company, but could you tell me in your own words, what do you provide in the marketplace? What is your company all about?
So Conejo Awards is all about unique recognition pieces, beautiful custom created awards, anything from needing to show appreciation to employees, to donors, any of your referral partners, or just somebody special in your life. We do a lot around the holidays for aunts, uncles, family members, your significant other. We also help companies with physical branding products. So anything you need to put your logo on so that you can hand it out so you keep your brand top of mind for everybody out and about in the community, we can help you with that.
So good. Now, I do want to brag about Crystal Evans a little bit, and I'll let Joey put her website up on the screen as you see this. This right here is like a magnetic binder that we'll talk about this later, but it's kind of a funny story that we made for some presentations. And this is all her. I'm pretty sure these mugs might be her. Like, it's kind of wonderful because we have like our own client in-house that helps us with a lot of this stuff, and it helps her business, and it's really fun. So she's absolutely great. The quality's good, and I can vouch for her. So there you go. I will pay you, or you can pay me, or however this works later. So we talk a little bit about what happened to kind of before you study with us here at Influential You. And in your own words, tell me a little bit about your story. How did you get into business? Like, how was your rise to, becoming a business owner? How did that go for you?
So it really started, right out of high school, I went to Cal Lutheran University. I was playing volleyball there. That was one of my top schools of choice. Mm-hmm. And so went in, majored in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. I wanted to be really connected in the communities. That's another reason I chose Cal Lutheran. I wanted to stay local. A lot of my friends took off. They're like, I'm out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm like, I like California. I like the weather. I'm going to stay here. My family's here. And so I really started my journey there. And I did, I had like the templated, you graduate high school, you get your degree, you go to college, get a 4-year bachelor's degree. And then you get a job, and then you look for a house, and you try to find a significant other, and you start a family, and, very much was following my parents' template, but that was very different generation than we are. So, but yeah, that was where it all started. And I was going down the path. I worked for a veterinary hospital.
That's where we met.
Yep, that's where we met. Yep.
That's why we were sharing pictures of dogs.
Yes. So, and I did well there. It was my first job out of college, and it was actually really exciting because I thought I was going to have some boring like marketing, Like, oh, I just like I'm a receptionist for a marketing bigwig, and I book appointments and stuff. But I actually got to be really hands-on with the animals, do a lot of social media. We were planning a big move from a small facility to a big facility with added services. So there was a lot of new and exciting things, and it was kind of a wing it thing. Like they hired this kid out of college because they couldn't afford the marketing professional, and I just was like, well, here we go.
I can fit that space.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I grew at the hospital. The owner was a big mentor of mine during the time. He was very business oriented, which is not typical in the veterinary industry. Typically, it's a vet who's just thinking about the medical side and the patient care, which is super important. But you also, if you want to keep your practice open, you have to be business minded as well. So I learned a lot there. I ended up buying my first condo right before I turned 30. So, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'm doing pretty good. Like, especially for living in California, it's expensive out here.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
So,
yeah.
And so, and then there was more opportunity. I was presented with the opportunity to take over Conejo Awards. And being an entrepreneur was always something that I had wanted to do. But I'd never really sat down and thought about like, how am I going to get there? I was very happy in my bubble, like, doing marketing, running a hospital, like, working with the animals and stuff. And so it was funny because I got the offer and I talked to my parents, and my mom was just like, you should just go for it.
Wow.
She's like, we'll support you however we can. You don't have a lot of commitments. I'm not married. I don't have kids. Like the condo was rented, so I didn't have to worry about a mortgage. And so that's where the entrepreneur journey started. So
that's so good. And so I'm going to ask this question because inside of your survey, when we talked about this before the show, you said that it was not true, accurate thinking that you were doing. Lots of influences were kind of in your ears, but you were naive in thinking as well, because before the pandemic, things just kind of went your way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You fall into a job in which pays you enough in California to buy a condo, which Josh doesn't have a condo. You were able to do a lot of different things. So tell me a little bit about kind of the true accurate thinking, or what you thought was the accurate thinking, or why it wasn't true. And then secondly, you were naive in your thinking. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think I didn't have the future thinking. So it was very like, I'm a performer, so I'm very in the moment. I love being in the present, and sometimes I'm not thinking about 5 years down the line. I'm just like, hey, what am I gonna have for lunch today? Like, and that's as far as it goes. And so that was a lot of it, is because I had accumulated these achievement or milestones of success. I was like, hey, I'm doing it right, and I don't have to think about it because everything's worked out so far. So if I just keep going the way I'm going, then eventually I'm gonna hit the next milestone and it'll be fine. So there was just a lot of like, some people call it luck. I feel like it's a combination of luck and an instilled like basic knowledge. My parents are very forward thinking, and they plan, and they were much more strategic than I was, especially in my early 20s. And so I think learning that as I was growing up, that was instilled. Like when I was in like fourth grade, and my dad would come home and talk to me about financials from the restaurants and stuff, and I loved it. Like I was like such a nerd, But I think having that base knowledge contributed to the success, and that just helped me. But realistically, I was just getting by. Like it wasn't, it wasn't accurately thought out. It wasn't ambitious. It was just, I have a skill set, and I kind of just float through with it.
Yeah, and that naivete and the things that you were thinking when you were looking at it, it was working out. You said something about ego and conceit,
Yes.
And I went, wow, that's a little extreme, but I guess that's what we say. So I went, oh yeah, that's probably, we taught her that language.
Yeah.
But tell me about the ego and conceit that you were like, you had to face when you started to, kind of learn that you were living that kind of way.
Yeah.
What opened your eyes to those kind of things?
So the pandemic was a really big eye opener. I knew I had the ability to do strong networking. When I took over Conejo Awards, I already had so many strong relationships in the chamber for the greater Conejo Valley. And so there was a big clientele pool that I knew I could immediately hit on. And I also, there was like like an ego around everybody likes me kind of thing. I don't run
Oh.
into, people that, or they're not going to openly tell me to my face that they don't like me, kind of thing. And so was an assumption of, everybody's going to want to do business with me because I'm this awesome person. And, not everybody feels that way. It's, facts, reality.
And I love that, because that's going to lead us into the second part. Like, so then you start to study with us. First, before we get into that, and we'll come back to that in a second, what was that thing? Like, because you know me, you trust me, but at the same time, like, you came and saw Drew speak.
Yep.
Our vice president out of New Zealand.
Yep.
And Drew was speaking with Kirkland. And I remember that was the first time that you got to see the whole presentation and really get it from them. Tell me kind of the experience. Where were you at when you're like, that's it, I got to do it?
Yeah. Well, so we really went, Tim Joyce and I, we really went just to support you.
Yeah.
So,
Tim Joyce, by the way, we love you. And I bet he's watching.
I think he's watching. Yeah. So we really just went to support you because you're a friend. We support you. We're super excited about your new endeavor and everything. And, sitting there and kind of working through it, it's initially you're like, oh, this is just going to be one of those programs, or it's going to be another like DISC or Myers-Briggs. And, as they're sitting there and talking about it, and it's not just what they're telling you and communicating, it's the questions they're asking, in those initial workshops. It really makes you think. And then that's kind of what triggered it for me was, oh, well, I'm not thinking about anything the right way. And it was the fact that I couldn't answer the questions, or I didn't have clear, precise goals that I could spread out. We call them aims. Yep. But at the time, my thinking was goals and things like that. And so, the fact that I couldn't articulate it and I couldn't answer those questions, like I had no idea. Like, I don't even think I answered on the survey. I was just like, I think this, like, kind of thing. And so my paperwork was probably, they were like, this girl needs help.
That's great. So it was kind of like you saw all these spots that you felt like you knew, but then it started to help you question, hey, maybe I don't really have a plan. Maybe I should get one. And that was kind of your deciding factor. Hey, I need a plan. They have a plan.
Yes.
Okay. And then you get in there and you start to look at the naivete, the ego, the conceit. Where did that come from? Like, because you said that it was around your mechanics and practice programs when you started to really see that. So you've gone through the 6-month fundamentals of transaction, and now you're doing the next program. Tell me more about facing those things. What were those things like? How did they stick out to you?
So I think there was a lot of it was triggered by the fear of I'm going to lose my business. So, but then with those fears, because I was in mechanics and practice, like everything from fundamentals of transaction was starting to make sense. It was starting to click. And I was like, okay, this is how we apply all of these things that we've learned. Everything's making so much sense. And so there was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was, okay, I'm not going to lose my businesses. This is how I'm going to move forward, or this is how it's not going to be so bad. Like maybe I'll lose one, but I'll still have the other. Or, once we got a certain point into mechanics and practice and bouncing things off my study group and just talking about different, aspects and the way to like plan and move forward and to think accurately about all these things, the panic left of I'm going to lose everything. And it turned into, okay, it's going to be tough, but this is how I get to the light at the end of the tunnel. So
I love that. And I love something you threw in there that I need to also recognize is that during the program, she also purchased a second location. And when she purchased the second location, she had to get some help with the transaction. And Kirkland, I know, helped, and because I'm not qualified to help you buy a business. Right. And so it's nice to know and recognize the fact that you kept moving right before the pandemic. And then boom, faced with this giant closure of everything, people suddenly don't need awards, or I don't know. Now, I'm going to ask it this way, because one of the things that you put in the survey was you didn't lose your business.
Yes.
And I want to hear more about, that thinking, because I imagine it was a hard few years, and in your industry, there's a lot of competition and like so tell me a little bit about all of that. How did you survive the pandemic in a time when a lot of businesses like yours didn't stay open?
Right. So first of all, I don't know that I'm going to call it competition. Because we do, we are a little bit more niche where there's something that separates us from everybody else.
If I may just, yes, I know that. I know that very well. Well done. I have now been fixed on my transactional competence by the master. Well played. Go on. Fantastic.
So it was a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. Companies weren't having awards dinners. They weren't having events. We weren't doing promotional products. There was nobody to give your stuff out to because nothing was happening. So it was a lot of reinvention. So instead of, here's your typical awards, here, come pick them up for the dinner, it's, hey, your sales team is at home. They're all working really hard. Typically we do awards, but how about something more functional that maybe your entire staff can use, or would feel appreciated with? Oh, and hey, fun fact, we can ship individually for you. So we will send it to your whole team, just give us the address list. We'll drop ship everything, package it. Do you want to add a note that tells them like how grateful you are or thanking them for hanging in there during these tough times? So it was a lot of, let's look outside the box. Let's, do something a little different. Normally we would send them a crystal piece, but they're at home. So maybe an embroidered blanket, or how about we laser engrave some Bluetooth speakers or a wireless charging thing, things like that. So
it was very customer intimate.
Yes.
And I find that in that there were a couple times where we've had discussions along the way that crack me up, right? Because there's a point in which you must make invitations.
Yes.
And you weren't necessarily doing that. And I think you know where I'm going. You want to tell that story just a little bit?
Yeah. So one of my things, especially as a performer and loving people and connecting, one of the things I'm really good at is giving referrals. One of the things I am not good at is asking for referrals. And so that's something where me personally, I need to work more on leveraging my network, leveraging, my resources and just the people around me. I give people, referrals all the time for different services just because I'm very well connected. I do a lot of networking. And there's nothing wrong with asking for the referral back and, hey, maybe some reciprocation. Like not everybody thinks about it, but just that little nudge, can help you get a little extra business.
Yeah. And I will say that little extra nudge was hilarious because I'm going to tell the story quickly. You and I were talking and I mentioned money was a little, tight. Yeah. And so I said something to the extent of, well, when was the last time that you asked for a referral?
Yeah.
Did you ever think that maybe I knew some people that could possibly use your services? And you laughed. And then I said, actually, I need something to give to people at this conference we're going to. What do you think? And you suggest the binders that I have in my hand right now that you can hear in my microphone if you're listening tomorrow on the podcast that clicks shut. And these were a massive hit because they were one-offs for each of the people that we met with. And it was simple, easy for us. And you had a sale right then and there just from the invitation of asking for invitations.
Yep.
There's another story that I'll just bring up, and we don't have to say who the client was or anything like that, but in the middle of a pandemic, you're able to make a massive sale that kind of repeats itself to the extent that you can. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's not something that I think a lot of companies go out and fish for in your industry.
Yeah. So it was really about staying connected with the previous, I don't know what to call them, like account rep, I guess.
Okay.
Or event organizer.
Sure.
And so they were so happy with something that we had done, but their event no longer existed. But because they were so happy with the service, the consistency of everything, the uniqueness of what we can offer, they actually referred everybody else in the company, and we picked up a newer growing territory as well. So we ended up, creating a little over 250 custom award pieces. And, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. It's not, it's not a quick little, here you go, but it's something that you can't find anywhere else, custom cut to what they were looking for, engraved, personalized, and it's a big hit. And so we just, signed our contract for the third year with that same group,
Wow. Third year too, because I still remember clear as day walking my dog down the street, laughing about walking my dog and talking on the phone with you. And you said a line that was probably the best compliment I've received since I've worked here. Do you remember what that line was?
I don't.
Okay. You said literally, my company helped you save your business.
Yes.
Tell me more about just that, because obviously it's our podcast, and if you're just listening, this is the Influence Ecology podcast. This is Crystal Evans, owner of Conejo Awards, and go ahead.
Yeah, so it's going back to that everything just works out for me attitude, and I'm just gonna wing it, and I kind of know what I'm doing, and I'll figure it out as I go. But that only gets you so far. And so in the middle of the pandemic, in the midst of I'm going to lose everything, what did I do? I gave up my career. It's only been, 2 years in the business, and this was a horrible decision. To Influential You showing me how to plan, how to think accurately, how to really have those ambitious aims, but also be able to do something with the ambitious aim. And so that's where, we reformatted how we were staffing, how we were running production. I looked at where can I cut costs, where can I leverage more resources, and things like that. And so without any of that, I probably would have just given up and been like, well, bankruptcy looks great. I'm only 30, so, I can recover from this. But instead, I had the ambitious mentality to actually fight to keep the business and to really, work hard, sit down, plan it, look at my resources, leverage my growing ecology of all these awesome new people that I have connections with. So
I want to study with you, help you with time
Yes.
management, help you with money management, all
Yep.
those different offers that people have that you just happen to know, and you speak a similar language.
Exactly.
And I'll say this, it's kind of the thing that popped into my mind when you were talking was this idea of the overnight success, like the 10 years in the making that we talk about all the time about the Black Eyed Peas or like bands that we like that, overnight. I know this Lake Street Dive has been coming up all the time in conversation. I opened for them in 2012.
Okay.
It feels good when you know the overnight success that took 10 years to happen.
Yep.
And it's fascinating to me because so many people don't see the work and action that you have to take
Right.
in order to get there. And I feel like you're in my story, and part of the brilliance of having John Patterson put me in the seat is the idea that people get to watch us move and watch us grow, and it becomes real for everybody. Hey, Josh was kind of struggling. And now what's he doing 4 years later? And now, so that's what I see in you.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that I called that out. But you also said that you learned something else. You rearranged the way that you started doing your hiring.
Yes.
And roles. Tell me about that. Tell me about that process and what you kind of gleaned from us and what you tried to do in your business.
So it was really looking at the different personality types and being able to leverage the personality type with their strengths and knowing what those weaknesses are. So it was shifting people's roles around and kind of shifting our processes around too. So one of the big things that we've changed that we're currently working on that's kind of evolving is I have 2 locations. The second one, it was touch and go. Should I have done it? Should I have not have done it? But it turns out it actually is helping me maximize my production force, which I ended up losing a production person. So without that second location, I would be dead in the water with just the one location. But also looking at my manager at one location is very production minded, and he's very good at seeing, okay, here's all the jobs for the week. Let's organize. I'm going to send everything that is related to this process on this day over to this store. Everything that's related over here, we're going to do this day. And so basically we have a production schedule that we work off of now, and it alternates between the stores based on, the workload, where we have the employees or where we have the materials. And so being able to maximize the efficiency is helping us to get the jobs out faster, which brings in the income faster. We're also able to utilize people's skills better as well. So we're putting different people into the quality control area. So we have a process. It gets produced, it gets checked, and then the client's notified. And so we don't want to run into too many times where we're having to redo something because yes, there's a margin in there, but it's not an infinite margin. So we can only redo things so many times. And there's also shouldn't be a need to redo it. Obviously things happen. You're going to have an equipment malfunction, or, we're in California, so the power goes out halfway through a job, and, but so really streamlining and moving employees into where they are the most efficient and effective. And then it ends up streamlining the whole process. So,
and part of that was the personalities, the transactional
Yes.
personalities, and saying, hey, this person's a producer.
yes,
I really need them to be in the fulfillment.
Right.
That's where they're really good.
Yep.
Oh, this person's a judge.
Yes.
Quality management.
Yep.
Hey, this person's a performer. Wait, I'm a performer. No,
Yeah.
I can't hire you. I don't need more
Right.
more happy-go-lucky here. We got work to do.
exactly.
So it's fun for me to kind of see you be able to organize it in that way, see those skill sets easily and know
Yep.
the personality. But one of the other things is also, it's not just the personality, it's also the want to do that
Yes.
type of work.
Mhm.
Just because someone would be a producer doesn't mean that they just naturally want to do the
Right.
fulfillment all the time. And so getting the right person in the right position
Yes.
with the right worldview, where they understand where their value is
Right.
really valuable. And I love that, that you have that. The last thing I'll say is this. You talked a lot about this today. Thinking in my aims in terms of facts and leveraging appropriately. Now, first I read it and said, I don't know what that means. And then I thought about my transactional personality of a performer who doesn't necessarily deal with facts the
Yeah.
same way everybody else does. A good example for those of you listening, I tell a story about a fish I caught, and almost every woman that I've dated has been a judge and said it wasn't that big. It actually was this. And they ruin the story with their facts.
Yep.
And as Kirkland always says, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. But you started to relate to facts differently. And I'd love to hear you talk about thinking about your aims in terms of facts and leveraging that.
Yeah. So I initially live in performer land. That's where my home base is, and that's where I like to hang out and float around. But, being a business owner, you have to take on other types of personality traits. It's not comfortable, but, when you're the top person and the buck stops with you, you kind of just have to move into those uncomfortable roles. Now, you always want to surround yourself with people that specialize in those, but when you're the final decision, you have to start thinking about the facts. You can't just live in, I can't just live in performer land or producer land. When I lean performer or lean producer, and I'm like, well, it's just easier if I do it all myself. And that's not actually the case. And so instead of just, putting my head in the sand and ignoring everything, I had to face the facts. So I had to look at things like, where do we reinvent this? Did this actually, what was the assessment at the end? Did we do this as efficiently as we could have, and then really digging into the process, into looking at where do I really want to be in 10 years and what resources do I have to get me to that 10-year. I would love it if somebody could just be like, well, here's your map, follow it, like have fun, go talk to all the people, network with everybody, and we'll see you in 10 years when you're super like happy and your aims are filled and met and everything. But unfortunately, when it comes to your own personal aims, you have to move into the facts and look at your resources and really assess, like, was that last transaction the way it was supposed to be? So
I love that for so many reasons, and I'm going to highlight this one as you get a drink of water, because you can talk a little bit.
It's different for you.
Well, I find that one of the things that I love that you just said there in the idea of leveraging those facts appropriately is a lot of people just have this blanket ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if you just keep swimming,
right?
Hey, it'll all just work out. We're gonna grab some loans. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me how many people don't stop and slow down to speed up. And it's very apparent that you really took the time. Nobody is going to give you the manual that's just going to make it.
Right.
But we do give you the opportunity to build your own manual and now refine it. And that's really what you're doing in Mechanics in Practice and Mechanics in Practice 2, where you're learning, hey, we're going to plan over here. We're going to have our strategies over here, our tactics and our implementation, and knowing the difference between where we are and what mood is supposed to be set, who's the right people for thinking of that. I know I'm peppering so much information, but that's what's so funny is because there's so much value in to be in this and be studying it for 3 years.
Yep.
I truly believe that you have probably forgotten more than most people know about the topic. And the continued work and action is how we're going to keep going.
Right.
So we're going to get our homework in every month on time, performer.
Yes.
But that's it. And I'm not a good student, and you're a better student than I am. But you get busy.
Yeah.
And if you could just maybe tell me a little bit about how even if it's a company, as a busy owner, how do you make time to actually do the study? Like, how's that even possible with all of the stuff you have going on?
Well, scheduling. And that's one of the biggest things that you guys are focusing on in fundamentals of transaction is, you keep when you're in fundamentals of transaction, you keep hearing it. You're like, yeah, scheduling. Okay. Like, I hate my calendar. I'm like, nobody, like, I don't want to do, could somebody do my calendar? Can I have an assistant for that? Like, but that was one of the things. And that is still one of the things. I think I put that on almost every one of my study papers. I still need to get better at scheduling. I'm doing better, but I need to get better. And it's also the prioritizing and that kind of falls in with the scheduling, and then thinking realistically about, do I have time for this? I know that you and I have both kind of looked at different groups that we've been involved in and different events that we look at going to. And, I've seen you do it. You're obviously way better at it than I am, but like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to attend this event. Like, yes, all my friends are going to be there, or, oh, there's all these people, but really looking at, does it meet my aims? And I think we had a conversation about that one time. You were asking me about a board position I was taking. Right. And it was, now how does this help you meet your aims? And I was like, let me tell you, Mr. D'Amigo, I have a plan for this because I thought about it. And so, and it was taking the board position. Yes, I'm very connected to the organization. It's one that I want to support, but it was also a gateway into expanding into other departments within that organization. I had already done some work for them as well, but anything to get, a little more recognition in the area, and we're already servicing them. So, it just makes sense to keep more business. We're doing the same thing for other departments that we could be doing for 10 other like additional departments that are on campus. So why not take the opportunity to market that? And I'm still giving back. It's not just, we're still working. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a little bit of cause marketing in a way of, hey, I'm choosing to spend my time this way.
Right.
It's also going to benefit me while I benefit others.
Yep.
And that's a big thing for a lot of people. I think that, maybe they look at business and it's just, it's business. I think of the Chamber of Commerce and, all they want to do is cut down trees and move mountains. And you're like, wait, hold on. No, they give back.
Yeah.
The Ventura Chamber of Commerce, for example, is the reason that we still have the Ortega Adobe in downtown Ventura. Like,
yep.
It's fascinating when you see what business can do for the community.
Yep.
And thank you for doing that. You're one of the examples that I always think of, because we had such a relationship through the county.
Mm-hmm.
You being all the way on the other side of the county, me being in Ventura, you being in Simi Valley.
Right.
It was fascinating just to see the friendships that we forged through that young professional group.
Yep.
That still is there. Tim Joyce is also listening and said, yay me, because he deserves that. And there's this kind of group of all of us, you, myself, Jen Caldwell. There's a few of us that really kind of came up together, that we're all kind of like, whoa, are we adults now? Like,
look at us.
That's really good. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I want to kind of get to your soapbox moment. But the answer that you gave was really good. And I love that you care, right? You're in communication when you can be, and you help. To me, like, your journey and what you kind of said about 4 or 5 minutes ago, a future in which you get to go and be at the mixers,
mm-hmm.
and then do the things that you want to do and know that the work is being done back home, is the world that you're moving towards.
Yes.
That's not what you typically hear from business owners. It's not like a typical stereotypical way that people talk about entrepreneurship or anything like that. And you're building that reality, and I see it happening. How far away do you think it is? How much more help do you need?
Oh, geez.
And here's the second question. Where did you get the help that allowed you to do that? How did you find the help in your business that you're paying to allow you to work the way you want to and be the type of leader at your organization that you are?
So I think we're close. I would like to, obviously I'd always like to be closer. If I could just go out and network and talk to people tomorrow and just be on boards and go to events and say, here, this is, we do all these cool things at Conejo Awards. Here's all these things I can tell you about. Now go talk to my people and they will make everything happen for you, kind of thing. But, I would say realistic, probably 7 years, is the time frame I'm working in, trying to think accurately about it. And, as much as I would love it to be tomorrow, it's not happening. So
why isn't it happening?
Because we are still recovering from the pandemic.
So you're basing it on the facts.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Keep going.
The wishful thinking, we're not winging it anymore. We're moving forward with the plan. But so I think really using the personality types when I was going through the interview process, I just went, I went through Indeed, got a ton of applicants, but one really stuck out stuck out to me because they had some industry experience. Now, it was more on the vendor side for me, but it still translates, and when we're out there looking for production people too, it's kind of what you touched on earlier too. It's not just about the personality type, but it's about the ambition or their willingness to do stuff. So, we have employees where they are so invested in what we're doing that, they mess something up and they will walk into my office, apologize profusely, try to give me money for the product that they messed up. And I'm like, no, like, it's okay. Like, that's, things happen. It's okay. But, really paying attention to just that drive, because you can't teach that. I can't teach somebody to do that. I can teach you how to run my laser all day. I can teach you how to make masks. I can teach you how to engrave stuff. I taught myself how to engrave things. So, we'll not wing it, but
we'll make it work. We
yeah,
have a plan. I know how to, but you can't train ethics.
Exactly.
It's hard. It's very difficult to be able to teach someone. It's the same thing with ambition.
Yep.
Kirkland often tells me, if I enroll someone in our program and they're not going to do the work,
yep,
it's like pushing a person uphill with a rope.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work well.
Yes.
In his good old country way of saying it.
Yeah.
And so I love that you bring that up, because I'm sure that's going to lead us straight to kind of your soapbox moment. I don't know what it's going to be about, but
right.
We give everyone an opportunity at the end of our podcast to really stand on their soapbox and stick up for a thing.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what your soapbox moment is.
So I think my biggest soapbox, thing that I push is really paying attention to your relationships and leveraging your resources. So networking is something that I'm very, it's one of my favorite things to do, talking to people. And, it's something that I learned from my dad as well. If you go to my dad's restaurant, everybody knows him, like all the regulars are like, oh, hey, Frank, like, thanks for the pancakes today. Everything was great, and my dad just walks by. He's got this like beaming personality. Everybody wants to talk to him, and he talks back, he's there, he's making everybody feel super welcome, and it brings people back. And that's something that I try to emulate in my business as well, is just, when I'm at these networking events, hey, hey, Tim, how's the polo working out? Oh, great. Like, oh yeah, you have somebody who wants more, send them my way. Great. Oh, cool. Or like, hey, how's your family doing? Like, even that personal touch, that's one thing that I think has really differentiated my business from a lot of other people that do things that are similar to mine, is that personal connection, and it's the service aspect. And so you have that relationship, networking's not what it used to be, where it's just like, here's my card, call me, like, I'm a lawyer, I can solve your problems kind of thing. It's about, like, for me, I have a customer who is an estate attorney, and he is my go-to once I get everything figured out, because one, I trust him. We have a relationship we've built. He trusts me to recommend the right products for him, and I trust him to, create an estate for me that's going to protect everything and make the most sense. So, really building those relationships and leveraging those resources out of those relationships, like you said, it's a reciprocation thing. It's not just a take, it's a give and take. And so, that's how you can be successful. I mean, it even translates into your personal life. Like, I have, people who are like, oh, I'm going to matchmake. Like, I have somebody for you. Like, let me. And I'm just like, I'm a little busy right now, but like, good to know that you're thinking about me that way, and it's like, and a personal introduction is like way less scary than, just randomly meeting somebody online. Like, no offense to anybody who's met on the dating sites. Like, I know it works out for a lot of people, but I like the personal connection and, things like that. So
on behalf of Crystal and myself, if you have single friends, please introduce us. Yeah. We are very interested in meeting them, and thank you for the referrals. I love that. It's so fun, and it's so funny because it's, that is an invitation for. It's fascinating to see how it duplicates itself in business, in relationship, in all those different ways. And there's something I heard that you're saying, and it's fascinating to me, because I really want to get this through to my really good friend, future Crystal, as you're listening to this in your car.
Yes.
To remember the time that you were talking to Josh. I just want to make sure that you heard all of the things that you just ratted off, all of the things about business that you and I had no clue about 4 years ago, all of the facts, the figures. I really do believe that you've done the work, and it's showing. And the way that you move and the way that you're communicating it translates. Yeah. It's realistic. And it doesn't mean that, every time we don't take a couple steps forward and then a half step back, or there aren't things along the way. But as long as that overall trajectory is going the way that you want, you talked earlier about, why we call them aims. And I know that you're going to know why we call them aims in about 3 sessions because you're going to get into Pogge's, book of the, philosophy of money.
Yeah.
And it's going to talk to you about that aims are a chain of goals.
Mm-hmm.
And these small goals get you to that aim. And when you bring that together with what you said about facts and terms, I know where you're about to go in your studies, and I'm so excited for you. It's going to be so much fun. Anything else to say before we kick you out?
No, I mean, I think not to get all sentimental, but it's been great. We've been on a journey together. We've been growing together, neither of us knew what we were doing in the beginning, and so it's been it's really been nice to grow with somebody, it's not just, well, Josh is up on this hill. It's we're walking up the hill together. So
it's a pleasure for me because it's when I talked to them at the very beginning, why do you want to do sales? And I told John Patterson, relationships. I want to be the relationship guy. So if I do end up calling you and you hear this voice over the phone saying, "Hi, I'm Josh," please be nice to me. That would be very kind. So thank you so much, Crystal, for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
Look forward to having you again. And I'm going to take us out. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If you'd like to know more about us, go to influentialu.global and explore our courses, consulting, and conferences. We offer a 4-year curriculum for those seeking an advanced experience. However, if you're new to Influential U, we recommend you start with Thrive, self-guided training. Thrive is a self-guided program that lets you learn at your own pace. Thrive members enjoy weekly live e-coaching sessions and an ever-expanding library of exclusive video lessons with our faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. You'll get a proven proprietary tools to accurately assess your career and develop a realistic strategy to achieve your aims faster. Your membership also includes chat. And this chat access is a chat access to faculty, plus there are discounts to our transformative conferences. You can sign up today for Thrive and use promo code 20OFF. That's 20OFF. And you'll receive a 20% discount on that monthly subscription. That's coupon code 20OFF. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys next week because we do this each and every single week. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week at 2 p.m. Pacific on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you can actually hit that little button and easily share the podcast with others. Tim Joyce, thank you in advance for sharing all of the conversation that your 2 best friends just had. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or any place you get your podcasts. Check out our show notes for links to connect with our guests, plus links to websites, books, or special downloads we talked about on today's episode. This podcast is made possible by the Influential U staff, faculty, and members all around the world. With special thanks to our executive producer, Tyson Crandall, and contributions from Michael Teehee, Joey Anderley, Daryl Anderley, Paul West, Liz Smiley, and our special guest today, Crystal. Thank you so much. The Influential U podcast is produced by Influence Ecology, LLC in Ventura, California. This episode was recorded on October 5th, 2022. The podcast theme is by Chris Standring, entitled Fast Trained Everywhere. And if you haven't yet offered a rating or review, I ask that you just take a quick moment, go to iTunes or your podcast app, and let us know what you think. This helps us more than you know. And we'll see you next week on the Influential U podcast. Thank you.